Welcome to Skin and Soul. I'm Gwenm A, a transformational body, sex, and soul coach, and I'm inviting you on a bold, unfiltered journey into the heart of our humanity through the lens of Eros. This is where we strip away the shame, dive into the unspoken, and embrace the wild, raw truth of our desires. Together, we'll crack open the taboo, uncover our deepest intimacies, and awaken the pulse of our sexual essence. Because real transformation, it's messy, it's thrilling, and it's oh so delicious. Buckle up, loves. Skin and Soul Beyond the Pale starts in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hi there, welcome. I'm Gwenm. I'm your host of Skin and Soul Beyond the Pale on the new Transformation Talk Revolution, which is part of the Transformation Network. And just to reiterate that Beyond the Pale isn't about tidy conversations. It's not here to please or offend. It's here to explore. And I am personally so tired of cancel culture that has stripped us of the ability to stay curious when we disagree. So if you're listening today and something comes up, I'm just going to invite you to take a breath because nobody's ever died from being offended. And I'm really actually hoping that things get touched on today that we don't normally get to talk about. I have such deep respect for my guest today, and I love her. Like, I can't say this. I don't know if I've said this before, but I do definitely have guest favorites, like favorite children, though we're not supposed to admit it. And I love all my guest children, but I definitely really have such deep respect for Teegan Toftley, who is a trans woman from Minnesota's Twin Cities, kind of soft-spoken, but definitely razor sharp wit. And she knew that 11, something inside her didn't match the outside. And it took decades truly to come out and then eventually make that transition. She is still married to the same woman who she met as a man and still dad to her children. And honestly is one of the most graceful, grounded people that I have met so far. So we're going to dive deep into some layers around becoming in the body. We'll talk about dysphoria, dysmorphia, and love that endures through transformation, and what it means to inhabit your truth in a culture that's obsessed with labels. So thank you for joining me today. I always like to give the opportunity for you to just talk about your experience and your journey thus far.
Sure. Well,
yeah.
My name is Teegan Toftley, and I'm a 55. Well, actually, I guess I'm about a week away from my 56th birthday. So I'm a 56-year-old trans woman from Minneapolis. And like you were mentioning, I had a very long journey and a very long struggle with gender dysphoria. I knew about it really early on, and like you said, at about age 11, I put the name to the issue that I was encountering. I mean, before that, I had notions, but it was at that point that I kind of realized what was going on. Given the nature of the time, that was the early 80s, and the fact that I was living in Washington, D.C., or just outside of it, my family was really aligned with the Defense Department. So notions of transgenderism or even, I guess, deviations from heterosexuality were absolutely taboo. So I kept that stuff under wraps. It took a really long time for me to kind of work out how I was going to come out. I coped, the best I could, but over time I just became kind of sick. It's funny because gender dysphoria in and of itself doesn't really create anything other than sort of this self-perception issue, but over time it develops a depression and anxiety issue that can manifest all sorts of issues on the side, physical and mental. So for me, I was developing migraines, just kind of holding it in and hiding and all that stuff. So over time, it just got worse and worse for me. And eventually, I was going to therapy for pain management, and that's when I started talking about gender dysphoria. We tried a lot of copes and, like cognitive exercises and, reframing and that sort of thing. And it worked for a little while, each one, but in the end, my therapist suggested that I try actual hormone therapy and dip into transition. Um, I didn't think that it would do much. I guess that's probably naive, but yeah, I was 48 at the time. I figured uh, whatever appearance or self-perception and physical appearance, whatever that was for me at that point was pretty much set in stone. But as it happened, when I started taking the hormones, really nothing happened at first. It's really slow. But the first thing I noticed was that the headaches pretty much went away. So my therapist basically said that's not really from hormones. Obviously, hormones can create issues with like headaches and pains and that sort of thing, but they don't usually make things go away. So I don't consider it like magic or anything like that. But we discussed it. It was probably due to the fact that I was taking control of my life and the dysphoria through that hormone therapy, and that kind of dissipated the depression and anxiety that I was encountering all my life. So by reducing that through the therapy, I was able to kind of get rid of those headaches. Frankly, that was worth the price of admission right there. But then about a year in, I started changing a lot. And at first people thought I was sick because I was losing weight. Originally, I was like 5'11", about 195, 200 pounds. And I lost about 55 pounds, and it was mostly muscle. People thought I was super sick, like, had cancer or something like that. And I didn't come clean at first. I was like, well, I don't know, maybe. I didn't tell them I had cancer, but that's just wrong. No,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I just really didn't discuss it. And when I was ready to come out, I did so. I think people were surprised. Um, I kept it under wraps for a really long time, even after I started hormone therapy. But in the end, there was a lot of fear for coming out, even then, which I guess would be about 2019, around the end of 2019. So I'd already been on therapy for about a year and maybe 4 months, year and a half, somewhere around there. And I was super worried about what people would think. I came out to my family first. They were shocked, and there was it wasn't easy. But I communicated. We communicate, and we worked through it. I think the best way to kind of describe how I did it was I described what I was going through in basically the clinical description or a medical description. So I basically just said that, yeah, I've had gender dysphoria all my life. I tried to cope with it, but in the end, I needed to do a transition to kind of deal with it. And gender dysphoria is basically a self-perception issue that kind of creates a lot of anxiety and depression for you. But as you transition, that self-perception issue starts to mitigate because there's a congruence between your physical appearance and your self-perception. So over time, the gender dysphoria is mitigated through the transition. And that's, I think, the truth of it. But I think a lot of people kind of confuse that. That message kind of gets muddled, and I think the general public has a lot of confusion with that. It's kind of hard to describe, I guess, to somebody that doesn't experience it, but that's kind of it. And my family understands it. They've been really great, and we're stronger for it at this point than we were before. When I was um, coping and hiding, there was a lot of concern that I was hiding. One of the things that my wife told me was that she was afraid that I was maybe cheating or something like that. And I was like, no, no, it wasn't that. I was basically just trying to figure out a way to cope with my self-perception issues, but at the same time, kind of lead the life that I've been given. And it was well, it was not working anymore. So I tried to get to that point where I could live the life that I needed to live. And over time,
Yeah.
that actually became better and better. So there was that. I came out of work, I guess, about 8 months later.
Mhm.
At work, it was fine too. I was working at home, so there wasn't a lot of impact in terms of like people watching me transition. There wasn't really an awkward period for me because a good portion of it was over COVID, and I didn't interact with people in person, so it
So that must
was.
have been the shock for them
Oh
seeing
gosh,
you.
yes.
You're right, like because you had the privacy. I want to say that that kind of gap, or wouldn't we didn't see anybody for a long time, and then all of a sudden, for them, it's like what happened? Where what
Yeah,
I missed?
there was a bit of a shock. I went to I guess a corporate gathering, and I was just at one of the tables. I guess we were celebrating a retirement or something like that. And almost everybody just came up to me and said, "Who are you?" And it's like, well, funny you might say that. I'm Teegan now, and you used to know me by a different name. And for the most part, people were initially shocked, and you know, I think just about everybody kind of went with it, and were really pretty supportive. So
Mhm.
all of the things that you think that you're going to encounter, that creates that fear to keeps you from trying to live your best life. And it's all, well, I'd say for the most part, very unfounded. And uh, people are good. And I think that if you just give them a chance, they'll understand. And I think that that's the big
Yeah.
message.
I think thank you. And because there's so much here. One, I think it's a really huge testament to your relationship with your partner, with your wife, because she didn't know anything. And that's a pretty big secret to keep a lid on for a really long time. So like over, I would think what, over a decade, right? To not say
Oh gosh,
anything.
yes.
And then to
Yeah.
have boys, right? Because you have two boys.
No, I have a son and
You
a
have
daughter, but
you have a
yeah,
son.
little boy.
To have them call you dad, and they still call you dad, which I also really respect, right? It's like the roles haven't, you didn't take on mom because you were like,
No,
yeah, that's not my title.
no.
And so, and they're both
Yeah.
really comfortable with you, which is great. And your wife. So tell me a little bit about your relationship with your wife, because I imagine that it was a little bit of a bomb drop when you approached her and started, and you started taking hormones, I would think, after you told her.
Actually, no,
Yeah.
it was before. I took hormones before, and because I didn't think it was going to work.
Ah.
um, so I figured I would just the whole time I was just concerned that it would get out, that I would be I guess I was concerned that if it got out and it didn't work, I would be kind of labeled, one way or the other, and it would be basically just a negative thing, a negative cloud, just not for myself, but for everybody involved with me. And I didn't, I was really afraid of that. So I wanted to keep it under wraps until I realized that honestly, it was for sure the right way to go. It was clear that it was something that I needed to do. Now, my wife and we met back in 1999,
Mhm.
and at that time I was very comfortable with the idea that I was going to just push this down, cope, and it was pretty effective at the time. I was just like, well, you know what, I can bifurcate my life here. This perception issue is a bummer, but I can live this way. I can do this. And for the most part, I'd been doing that for ever since I got out of high school. I was kind of managing that in I guess in an adult way, and it was like I said, it got more and more difficult I got older to kind of deal with it because of the depression and anxiety. and the buildup of those symptoms that came along with it. So, in terms of coping, it became less and less viable as a way to kind of live my life. Now, I met her in 1999. We'd been married when I came out. We'd been married for almost, I guess it would be 18 years, and we had a very, very close relationship over that time. It grew. Everybody who dates and probably is a newlywed, they probably have a lot of, I guess, eros love or the lustig love, where you have a lot of, sex. You're
Mhm.
you're focused on that sexual intimacy, but over time, a marriage, to my estimation, kind of grows beyond that. I mean, there's still sex, of course, but there's much more than that. It becomes sort of a life partnership. And I think because we were at that stage after 18 years, that we were very close in that partnership, that this coming out, while initially damaging, was actually okay, and it worked out. I don't estimate that this would work with everybody, because again, everybody has a different relationship with their spouse, so you don't know how that's going to land. But in our case, because of that close partnership, I think we were in a better place. We have good communication, and that really makes the difference.
And did it, and just curious to know whether it ignited any more arrows in the relationship? Did it deepen it and make it like completely new, something to explore in a very different way?
Well, yeah, actually, there's some interesting aspects to it. I mean, obviously, hormones, cross-sex hormone therapy is going to affect you. Obviously physically, but there's an emotional aspect to it as well, and there is a sexual function aspect to it too. And in my case, it's not as intense as I think some people experience it. Again, everybody's journey is different, as they say. So, I can I can still like do the act of lovemaking, in that sort of heterosexual male female sort of way. It's still possible for me. It's you know kind of more difficult. We have to go much slower. We have to do a lot more foreplay. This does
I was going to
actually
say,
sound
welcome
like
to
sort
getting
of a
older,
female
though.
thing. Yeah, that's
Welcome to
actually
getting older, because I think it's all slower as we get older. I think
yeah,
that's like where
that's
the jewel is that it is about the slowness, right? Where there's some beauty in like taking time, learning different things. And
oh
so,
gosh,
I mean,
yes.
and now it's, I mean, it's a different wheel because there's so much change has happened. And I would actually say, kudos to you for taking female hormones, because with estrogen comes all of that, those emotions.
Oh
Um,
gosh, yes. There's a lot of aspects to it that if you're doing therapy and you do for gender dysphoria, your therapist kind of like tries to prep you for some of this stuff, because it's bigger than you kind of expect. I mean, you get into the well, again, I was discounting it highly because I didn't think it was going to do anything. And so, she would say things like, oh, well, people are going to perceive you very differently than you did before. And it's not like a conscious thing. It's just how they do things. And that's how society works. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But there is a lot of difference in that. And it's I wouldn't call it quite off-putting, right? But it's like when it happens and it's like an obvious signal, you have to take a step back and go, oh, that's right.
Well,
That's
and
what's
is
happening.
it as a woman that you're having these experiences, or as someone who, because I think when we were talking, you said like, oh, it's not something I just say necessarily to people, right? So it's just showing up as a woman, and so you're
Right,
getting the full experience of, hi, I'm here, I'm in the room,
right,
right? This is
right. Yeah, I don't advertise that I'm trans to like the greater world necessarily. I mean, obviously I'm doing it right now, but and when I'm out, out in the world day to day, I don't like, I don't know, I don't wear the trans flag, I don't wear t-shirts, I don't say, "Hi, I'm Tegan, I'm a trans woman and I do trans woman things." No, I don't do any of that. For the most part, people see me as a woman. Actually, I don't think I've been misgendered in ages, except for on paper. Sometimes that's interesting.
Mm.
Someone someone will look at like some old paperwork, and see the change up, like after I legally changed my name and my sex, and they'll look at this, and they'll they'll use the he him pronouns with me, and then they look up and they're like, I don't know what's going on here. So it is kind of strange sometimes. I mean, that doesn't happen very often, obviously. I mean, that's a very particular type of situation. But for the most part, people
Mm.
just, yeah, hi again, nice seeing you again, and they don't think twice about it.
Oh no. And I said to you before, I'm like, you're gorgeous. Like seriously. I mean, and I often wonder, I'm like, God, how many women are like, God, really?
Well, yeah, I think I got lucky in that regard. I don't, you know, before, my wife tells me, you were a good looking guy. So, yeah, you'll end up being a good looking girl. I guess I never really put that together, but I work at it too. I mean, I didn't, I realized after I started encountering changes that I needed to start kind of working at integrating. Otherwise, things are not going to go well for me. So I worked hard to kind of modulate my voice and get it in at least a respectable state in that regard. And working on makeup and poise and that sort of thing. And I think that goes a long way in appearance and that sort of thing. So yeah, I've worked at it, yes, but I think there was a little bit of luck too.
Yeah, I was going to say there's like those beautiful cheekbones and eyes. I'm like, yes, no, you're good. I'm like, God knows, I still haven't mastered the art of makeup, as we can see. Um, uh, so when you look, so I thousand questions, but just thinking about, because I think one of the things that really drew me to your story is that it did take decades. And I said, as we were chatting, is and I think even in an interview you said like transgenderism isn't a common thing. Like it's not as common, and I find today that it's really become popularized. And I'm
Yeah, it
not going to be
feels like
very popular in saying that, but it like to me, I'm like, what is it in the water, people? Like seriously, and what part of it is fashion and trend and like a wheel of society and wanting to belong versus knowing something very deep and solid inside of you at a very young age, which I can appreciate,
right.
and wanting to squash that. And part of me is like, oh, actually, I think there's something beautiful that it took you the decades, because transitioning is a massive thing. It's not. And when we talk about dysphoria and dysmorphia, and again, I think both sound incredibly clinical and disorder based, although one is like, oh, I'm not identifying my gender with my body,
Right.
but there's still like this connotation of like there's something wrong with me, as opposed to like this is who I am. And so do you feel, because you're like, I had to learn these things to modulate my voice. So um in your authenticity, and I get where you're going. So like, if you just got to be you in your most like, without worrying about what anybody else thinks or whatever, how does Tegan show up?
Actually, now that I'm at this point, this is how I am. This is me. I don't try to do anything different, and I wouldn't necessarily back off from any of it. I think that it's odd because this is where I feel like the gender dysphoria is kind of like gone. They say it never really goes away, and I think that that's actually the truth of it. But it does kind of push itself into the background when your self perception is congruent with your physical appearance.
Hmm.
And oh my, I'm
I want to say
completely
if you're
shape.
healthy, right? Like I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
something around if you're healthy. And I think one of the things that has concerned me in this age is that we don't teach anybody how to love themselves as they are first and foremost,
right.
right? Like unconditionally love yourself. And from there, however, and this is just my thinking, right?
Oh
Like,
no,
especially when
it's
it comes to children and handing over hormones and such to children. And understanding that like who you are is who you are, and absolutely right. So and
yeah,
just dancing that fine line, because to me I'm like, oh, where does dysphoria become dysmorphia, and where does, because you said like it never goes away. And I'm like, I mean, we always have parts of ourselves that we're struggling with,
right.
right, internally, where we're like, oh, I wish I had this, I wish I was taller, blonder, whatever, smarter. um and parts of ourselves that we're like, oh, I'm struggling with. So I love that you are in congruence with who you've always felt you are, which is the most important. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I guess yeah, there's a lot of things to kind of unwind there, I think. Yeah, in terms of like, I guess the societal zeitgeist in terms of transgenderism, I think that um, I used to kind of like really go against the community on this one, whereas I would say that transsexualism, in terms of the definition, old school, you have gender dysphoria and nothing else worked, so you transition transsexual. That would be the old school definition, and that's the only one. And that's not how the DSM actually identifies this anymore. The term transgender is an actually much a broader set of, I hesitate to call it disorders, but definitions under that umbrella of transgenderism. Transsexualism is a subset of that, but there are other disorders and personality types that are actually that fit underneath that. And I think that that's where there's a lot of confusion, and it kind of muddied the waters quite a bit in terms of how society sees a transgender person in general, is because there's so many subsets and different definitions that are actually underneath that same title, that it can be very confusing. So when you see, like in school, in my kids' high school, there's, I guess, maybe 3,000 kids there. By the old definition, the old definition of like a transsexual, I think it's 1 in 8,000. I think I discussed this before.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's actually a accurate percentage now or ratio, but about 1 in 8,000 for male to female transitioning transsexual. And it would be about 1 in 22 or 23,000 for a female to male transition, um, in the transsexual definition. So by that definition, in my kid's school, there would be maybe one person that is a transitioning transsexual, like over the age of 16 or whatever. That's not the case in my kid's school. I think there's probably 35, 40 kids that identify as transgender there, which seems really out of whack. I mean, even by the expanded transgender umbrella, that seems like it's very, very high. So you do have that sense in your head that something's out of whack.
Something's out of whack, right?
Maybe there
Yeah.
is some sort of social contagion or something like that that's creating this issue. And a lot of the stats seem to actually be skewing towards that female to male uh, transition. And that is, like I said, it's much rarer than the male to female.
Mhm.
So it seems odd that that's happening. And you could argue it. Well, I don't know if you want to argue it, but there's the fact that it could be that we've opened up the definition, so now it's okay to come out and talk about this. There's probably some of that, but then is it a social contagion? Do the girls basically come out because it's cool and their other friends are coming out? I mean, there could be some of that too. And it's really difficult to kind of nail that down. Obviously kids are kids and they say stuff. Is it the truth or isn't it? I mean, in my case, when I was like in elementary school, like 6 or 7, I was weird. People didn't want to hang out with me because I was weird. I couldn't put a finger on it or know or understand exactly what was wrong with me. But by age 11, I kind of knew, and would if I would have came out at 11, what would have happened? You put all the DoD military family stuff aside, the 80s where, there was like a different world. Say it was right now and I was an 11-year-old and I came out. Would you feel comfortable believing an 11-year-old on this point without more? It seems to me like you would want to vet that a little bit and kind of really understand that before digging into hormones. Now, I understand that there's this argument in the community that if you intervene with hormones during puberty or pre-puberty, that that's better for the person, so they don't have to encounter that cross hormone developments, which is very distressing. And I can vouch for you, for them. It is actually very distressing to go through that. But on the other hand, you know, kids say stuff, right?
I was going to say, but kids go through stuff in puberty. It
Yeah,
is it is hard to go through puberty. Like that's the thing. Like
right.
puberty is never fun for any child, teen, right? Ever. It's generally wrought with feeling of unbelonging and I think about our versions of belonging and unbelonging when we were kids
Right.
and
Like everybody wanted to be the goth kid or the dog,
every
the jock or
exactly.
yeah.
And I was a dancer. Everybody wanted to be like, I don't know, like overly skinny. I mean, like actually, I mean, I grew up in like anorexia culture. It was cool, right? It was like it was cool to like what is it, the heroin look and all of that
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
Like that
yeah, I
was
remember that. That
it
was
was
like back in the
remember
90s. The heroin
yeah, 80s,
was
90s, like it
peak.
was
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was cool, right? And so I think for me that was like one of the biggest dangers. What I do really identify with is like, and I have this memory and wrote down this story, which actually I think didn't get any popularity, probably because somebody thought I was mocking them, which I wasn't. I was about 4 years old. My mother's hanging up my dresses, and I was so excited. I don't know. I just have this memory of being like, I had this cognition that I was like, oh, I'm so happy to be a girl. Right. I was like, oh, I'm so happy. Right. I see her like, I'm like, I don't know. Even then I was like, ooh, dresses. And I had a moment at that age where I just stood there for a minute. I was like, what if I'm not? What if I've got it wrong? And I was terrified. And I remember like waiting, like, do I ask her? Do I ask her? And I did, which my mother laughed off as like, whatever. And it turns out, yay, I'm a girl. And I can imagine that the opposite, right? When you're young and you're identifying on a very different visceral level, which to me is very different from being like, I want to be a cowboy, or I want to
Right,
be,
right.
or I want to have short hair and I want to like, carry my AK, I don't know.
Yeah, I
I want
got
to
you. I know
join
what
the
it
army.
is
I don't
too.
know what it
Yeah,
is, right? These things that we define gender roles, which I think is where things start to get really muddy.
right.
But one of the things that I want to ask you is like in your body today, one, is there anything about your your masculinity that you miss? And I say this more like in being a man, is there anything that you actually miss? Because I think, you know, in my body, every time I've changed something in my body, even though I'm happy, I have no regrets. I also go like, oh, there's like consequences, right? There's like, yay. And I know you said like, you had very fortunate that you had like such great experiences, but is there any part of that that you miss?
Gosh. I think the short answer is no, but there are differences. I was actually moving stuff in the basement, like some old plastic tubs full of like a bunch of junk or books or whatever. And I put those up like so long ago, and I was trying to lift them, and I'm like, holy smokes, I can't lift this thing. I don't even know how I got it up there. And you put two and two together, and you're like, oh yeah, I was like a lot bigger back then, and I actually had the strength to do it. Now I don't. So I don't know if I miss it per se, but it's
No.
I was stronger back before transition, and I guess I never really thought about it too much, but yeah, that is an aspect of masculinity that's kind of nice to have. I mean, being able to lift like, whatever over your head and you can do it, that's cool, but not anymore, I can't. I have this I had this miter saw in my garage that I threw up above the refrigerator. We have a beer fridge out there, and I just throw stuff on top of it. But this was this miter saw. It's a pretty big one, and oh my gosh, I felt like I was gonna die trying to put it up there again. And before, back in the old days, it was just a thing. You just prop it up there, no big deal. Now it's like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? So yeah, I guess that would be one of the things that I kind of miss. I mean, there's a lot of differences. I kind of touched on this earlier about how society perceives you, and I think I'm comfortable in saying that I've seen kind of both sides of it, and there are big differences, and you know, not all of it is positive. I think there's a lot of like um, misconceptions in the trans world that, if you just transition, all your problems go away. And I think that's a little bit of a naive statement. You're you, right? Uh, you're going to be you after you transition to. So whatever issues, problems, dreams, goals, desires, passions, those are all coming along for the ride, regardless of how you look. And I don't know if you're kind of an ass before transition, you're probably going to be kind of an ass afterwards
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, you take yourself with you no matter
Right.
what. And that's, I mean, that's true no matter what we do, right? Like
Oh
whether you
gosh, yeah.
lose, like for anybody who's ever needed to lose the 40 pounds, like if you're still stuck in the same headspace of wherever you were before, right? And so then like talking about, oh, the dysphoria never goes away, which I kind of go like, what? I mean, that makes us all dysphoric in some level, like in some capacity, and dysmorphic in some capacity, right? Like because we're never going to show up in the thing that we think we should be, or like that's kind of our
Yeah.
um
That's what's
the
kind of
imposition.
insidious about gender dysphoria is that, on kind of the surface level, everybody has a little bit of that. I mean, everybody has like that dysmorphia, like you say. I mean, you want to be like, oh yeah, it would be cool if I had like, I don't know, six pack abs or was like 3 inches taller or whatever. And everybody has those wants and needs. It's just that with, I guess, the medical disorder of dysmorphia and gender dysphoria is kind of I guess it's not really a subset, they're separate things, but in both those cases it's kind of ramped up. It's a bit more intense, and it kind of rules your life in a way, so it's difficult to kind of shake. Where, I guess some of these things are like, oh well, if I was this or that, it's kind of a passing thing. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I'm totally
Well, I
killing
think if it's a
myself, but
passing thing, then then waiting longer is always better than not. I think about like, I got my first belly button, I only have one. I got a belly button ring. I was definitely, I want to say how old was I? I was like well into my 30s.
right.
First tattoo in my 40s, right? I'm like, this has got to live with me for a long time. And and I don't know if I've ever discussed this on this show yet, but I ended up doing labiaplasty, and which I consider dysmorphic, right? Because I think now we have this like idea of what we're supposed to look like as women and what we're supposed to look like as men, and having a very, I'm going to say, porn culture, perfect culture, glossed over, Vogue magazine. And I did this late in life. I don't, and again, I don't have regrets. Like I'm like, yeah, I thank God I had a good surgeon and so on. And I'm very well aware of my consequences in terms of sensations in my body, and did it cure my thinking? I'm not sure, right? Like it's, there's still that part that is like the little girl of like what's normal, that we're not taught about what's normal, as humans, that we are this incredible array. So for you, when you like now being in the body, in the person, as the person that you want to be, um what's your favorite part about being a woman?
Oh my gosh. That is a really interesting question because I've always focused on the normalcy side of it, where it's like I am just sort of like I feel normal, right? So I never
Mm-hmm.
really think about it, but um yeah, what's my favorite part about this is that it's silly because well, I guess it's not silly, but I feel validated in myself. I
Mm.
feel that this is where I want to be. And there I always have this little bit of a regret that I didn't do it sooner. But
Mm.
it's one of these things where for the longest time I felt like I was incomplete. And now I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm valid. I feel good. And in terms of I guess I kind of dance around this a little bit. And the thing is that do I consider myself a woman? And I guess the answer is probably no, not in the traditional sense. And
Mm.
that's because I don't have the lived experience that you do. You were born that way. You grew up, little girl, teenager. You went through all that stuff. I went through none of that stuff. I so there's I guess an aspect of imposter syndrome, in a way. But on the other side of it, there's the gender dysphoria and then the mitigation and the validation. So I'm okay with it. But there's this thing where it's like, well, you have all this lived experience. You are truly a woman. I am doing this to kind of mitigate a self-perception issue. Am I a woman? Well, I guess that really depends on where you're at in terms of the definition. No, I don't have ovaries and a cervix, and I can't give birth or anything like that. So I guess in that sense, I'm not, XX female. However, again, from day to day, no one sees me as anything else other than a woman. So I guess it's where you kind of land that, right? It's not really, um, it's not terribly important in the grand scheme of things whether I am truly a woman or just a trans woman. I I'm Tegan, and
I was going to say
I'm
you're
good with that.
Tegan. Yeah. And it's like that brings up like the whole, and we won't have time unfortunately, because I'm like, oh, the label thing, which I hate too, right? I just, this whole idea of a society that we're so bent up on
Oh
having to
gosh, yes.
label everything, right? Like
Oh,
I
don't
just
get me
see,
started.
I see Tegan as like, like in this beautiful feminine essence. You can call it yin essence. You can, but like in that flow, in that beautiful space. And yeah, I mean, I was with a woman for 17, almost 20 years, and I got the, oh, you're a lesbian. And I'm like, I'm not a lesbian. Oh, you're bi. I'm like, stop it. Just stop it. Just call me Gwenm. Right? Like that's enough now, right? Unless you're in my bed, like let's,
Yeah,
right?
I get
Yes.
you. There's a lot of that talk. I guess in social media, like, well, if you date a trans woman as a guy, are you gay? And I'm like, I don't care if you have an emotional connection to that person, man or woman, and you are close enough to be intimate in that way. I think that's a win. Who cares what
Hmm.
they call it? And yeah, that's, I guess, not as popular as I'd think it would be.
Nope. I know it's not. And there's this, and I think I brought this up too with oh my God, Louis C.K.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Right? There's that great skit that he does where I think the night after, right? And I
Yes.
guess he asks her a personal question, and so she just kind of slams him back with that feeling of like, oh well, I used to be a man or something like that. And he was like, what? No, what? No. And which really begs the question of like, at what point do we get to just have privacy? Where do we always have to over explain? And
Right.
where do we like need to carry the sign that says this is what I was, this is why? I mean, and I it's different,
That's an
in
excellent
the
point. Yeah,
in
because
intimacy is one thing, like who you're with and who you decide to share whatever you want to share with. But I don't think we owe the world full disclosure. I mean, if that's what you want, great. But if it's also this sense of like not hiding from shame. It's just like, as a person who's, slept with so and so, I don't walk around and go, oh, guess what we did last night. I mean,
yeah, right.
I might to my sister or something, but like it's not like I'm walking around the world going, guess what?
Well, yeah, for sure.
You
So,
know.
yeah, well, I completely agree with you. I think we're on the same page with this. It's that, with dating, I I am not a big fan of one night stands anyway.
Mhm.
Like I said, I kind of like the intimacy. I mean, I'm married anyway, so I kind of avoid all of this whatever this is. But I can kind of see the point of not disclosing on a date because you're like not sure where this is going. Why do I need to actually disclose this? But then it gets awkward if
If you like
oh,
the person, right? You're like,
right.
so
So it's hard to actually kind of navigate that in a safe way, right? And
yeah,
you don't want people freaking out on you, like, oh my, there's that movie. What was it? The Crying Game back in the '90s,
yeah,
where you get that. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess that's a 30-year-old spoiler, but yeah, the pretty lady's a guy. Anyways, it's the big shock in there, and you don't want to do that to a guy or a
or
girl.
a woman, yeah, just
That's not
agreed.
cool. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, I don't want to like introduce myself as a trans woman to every person I meet. That's
No,
ridiculous. I'm not going to do that.
yeah. Okay, I'm so aware of time, so like this is my inelegant way of transitioning. Haha. So bad, like my pun, it's bad, bad. Okay. So, based on James Lipton's questions from the Actor Studio and Bernard Pivot's questions, we're going to try. There's 10 of them, and apparently I must have like 7 minutes or something.
Right?
So, let's see. Shall we go for it?
Oh, sure. I'm ready. Let's do this.
Um, what is one truth your body has always known? She's like, you have 8 minutes. What's one truth your body has always known that your mind took years to catch up to?
Wow. I guess really it's my transition. It's something that once I got there, I am just shocked that I didn't do this sooner, and I'm kicking myself honestly. It's something that I should have done way sooner. So yeah, that congruence is really important, and I know we've kind of belabored that point quite a bit. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, what is the most intimate moment you've ever had that had nothing to do with sex?
Oh gosh. You know, I I think those, well, I guess it would be a collective moment, but it's those close moments where you're just kind of sitting there with a person, maybe just watching TV or sitting there watching a fire in a fire pit on a beach or something like that. And you're
Mhm.
maybe holding hands, but you're just kind of close and you're having that silent moment. And, it's just in that moment, everything's right. And there's just a warmth and a human connection that's just perfect.
Mm,
I like that.
beautiful. Thank you. If you could be remembered for one sensation you gave someone, what would it be?
Hmm. I think that I would like to be known for, in terms of a sensation, is basically just kind of a good feeling, sort of a happiness or mirth, and I want to
Mm.
go with that because I think when someone walks away, I don't want them to be like upset or sad about a situation. I just want them to go walk away happy, and I work hard for that. So yeah.
Mm. Thank you. If pleasure were a language, what would your first word be?
Wow. I guess that's it. Oh my gosh. Pleasure is my first word. Oh my gosh. Gosh, wow is a good one, honestly. I think I'm
Hmm.
gonna go with that. I like it. Yeah, you know, it's when you're introduced to like that level of intimacy and that first time. Yeah,
Mm.
wow is always wow. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. I
It's
like
like,
it.
oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
oh.
It's this thing. This is awesome. So yeah.
If your erotic life had a title, like a novel or a film, what would it be called?
Oh my gosh. Do I have to actually answer it in terms of an actual title or I can make up the movie name?
Oh, yeah, no, you totally make up the movie name.
All right. Okay. So it's got to be some sort of like long-term epic, I guess. I guess it would be something like through the years a intimate touch through the years, I guess. So let's go with that. I like it.
I like it too. That's lovely. Thank you. What's one thing you've never said out loud, but you wish someone would ask you about?
Wow. Seems to me like if I say it now, it's going to be out there, but wow, I guess um I have never said that I'm actually pretty open to most ideas sexually. I'm like, well, you know what? Ask. I'll probably say yeah, let's do this. So,
I love
yeah.
that. Just ask. Um, what part of your erotic self are you still afraid to bring to the light?
Oh wow, I think that's a couple, those two together are kind of the same thing, aren't they? They kind of go hand in
Hmm.
hand. So might just ask, I guess there's the side of it where I haven't had my bottom surgery yet. I'm planning for it next year. And I want to experience that. I want to experience that intimacy in that way. I think that that would be a like a really important completion, and
Mm.
it's something that I feel like I need to do. It's I'm sorry about the time. I was going to expand on that a bit, but I
Hmm.
guess I'm kind of
No, we have 3 minutes. Go for it.
all right, all right. Um, I never really thought of my identity and my sexuality as kind of tethered. So I know that a lot of people are very, very rigid on that sort of thing, but I'm not. And so my transition really didn't change a lot in terms of my sexuality. I mean, I've always been kind of flexible, I guess is what I would say. And it's basically just a matter of mustering the emotional contact for somebody to actually want to go through those types of things before I want to do anything. And in terms of specific acts, I guess that would be that. After bottom surgery, I want to have that intimacy there too. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being so honest. Thank you.
Okay.
What dies in you when you pretend, and what comes alive when you don't?
Wow. I guess this right now is basically the representation of that. I mean, before I was slowly dying. I don't think that that's overly dramatic. I mean, the number of migraines that I was having towards the end there was probably about 2 to 3 a week, and it was debilitating. And afterwards, I don't have that problem anymore. So it's and there's no hiding, there's no anxiety, there's no I'm not sad. It's all good. So that juxtaposition between what I was before and what I am now is really just the poster child for that question, I think.
Thank you. So we have two more. I'm going to try to do it in under like in 30 seconds.
All right.
Finish this sentence. When I leave this life, I want my skin to remember.
My skin?
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh. I want to remember all of those warm moments, body to body, that sort of thing, and just being close to other people. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Thank you. And if the soul has a scent, what does yours smell like today?
Wow. I'm gonna go with probably bergamot.
I love it. I love it.
bergamot. It's a good scent. I like it.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we have 30 seconds. I had if you could speak to that 11-year-old who knew but couldn't say, what would you tell her now?
Oh my gosh. If so my 11-year-old self back in 1981, I would say um be brave. Stick it out for now, but be brave and look for those avenues to express yourself. You don't have to necessarily cope. You can do a better job than what I did, but um understand that the time that you're living in is probably not going to work the best. So there's that.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. I'm sorry to cut this so short. I know we're at the edge and the limit. If you want to watch Teegan live, right, at Twin Cities Teegan Official on Instagram, I'm going to be waiting for that comic book that I read about somewhere where you get to write about your life. I hope you do that, by the way.
Oh gosh, I want to. That would be so much fun. So I'll have to dig into that.
So thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. If you want to know anything more about what I do, which is I'm a body, sex, and soul coach, you can go to gwenmcarsley.com. Do you want to lead anyone anywhere else?
No, I think I'm good.
I'm good.
I think this has been awesome. I'd love to do it again sometime. So yeah.
Me too. Thank you. I would love to have you on again. There's so much to cover. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night. I will see you next week. And yeah. Bye. Good. Thank you for listening to Skin and Soul with me, Gwenm. Join me Fridays at 10 a.m. PST on Transformation Talk Radio. Catch the podcast anytime on your favorite platforms. You can follow me on Instagram at Luvology. Ready to take the next step? Book a compatibility call with me at gwenmcarsley.com.